Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 15. In this episode, I will be talking about Bellator 286 and UFC Fight Night, Dern vs. Jan. Both of these cards were going on at the same time, so it was a very busy weekend for the combat sports world. Ring that bell. All right, and now getting in to UFC Fight Night, Dern vs. Jan. Let's start with the first bout of the night. We had a bantamweight fight. We had Gaudio Canetti taking on Randy Costa. And going into this, I felt Costa was going to win this fight based on his striking. But, man, this fight only lasted a minute and four seconds. And Canetti gets the quick submission. Moving on, we had a catchweight bout. We had Julia Stodorenko taking on Chelsea Chandler. And Chelsea Chandler, man, her ground and pound and her elbows are vicious. She got the finish in the first round. She looked really, really good. Now, the big question with her is she going to fight at bantamweight, or is she going to find enough competition at the featherweight division in the UFC to compete at that division frequently? But I don't think that she's going to get enough competition in the featherweight division to stay there, so she's probably going to have to cut down to bantamweight. But I'm very excited to see what her next move is. She's a very exciting fighter. She's very powerful, and like I said, her ground and pound is brutal. She got Stodorenko out of there in the first round after getting top position, and she just ground and pounded her way to victory. So congratulations to Chandler on getting her, I think this was her first UFC victory. So congrats to her. Moving on, we had a middleweight bout. We had Joko taking on Allen. And Brandon Allen gets the first round submission. Very impressive because Krzysztof Joko is a very good grappler. And, Allen showed that he can hang with a very, very good grappler. So, Allen gets the first round submission. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Joaquim Silva taking on Jesse Rodson. And Silva gets the TKO finish in the second round. Moving on, we had a heavyweight bout. We had El Tatifi taking on Oleinik. And, man, Oleinik, he's got 60 MMA wins in his career, but he did not get a win in this one. Latifi gets the decision victory. It was a slow, plodding pace. These are both older heavyweights, so nothing really exciting to expect, but it was still a decent heavyweight scrap. Moving on, we had another catchweight bout. We had John Casteda taking on Daniel Santos, and Daniel Santos gets the finish in the second round, and that was the end of the prelims. Now, moving on to the main card. We had Mike Davis getting a really, really impressive decision win over Boshefi. I think that's how you say his name. But Mike Davis, he looked good. So, I think this might be a different version of Mike Davis that we're seeing here. But a really impressive performance by Davis. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had Sadquid Youssef taking on Dan Shantis. I think that's how you say his name. And Don Shantis, he came in on very, very short notice to keep Youssef on the card and fighting. But Youssef gets the 30-second submission in the first round. I mean, he just showed that he was levels above Shantis. But, I mean, Youssef, he's a ranked featherweight. He's going to be entering the top 10 very, very soon. So keep an eye on Youssef. Obviously, he got the 30-second submission, so he's a very, very talented fighter. And he should be fighting the upper echelon of the featherweight division very, very soon. So I'm excited for that. Moving on to the next fight, we had Borsolos taking on Trevin Jones. And Borsolos gets the decision victory in that one. The next fight was the co-main event fight, and it was in the welterweight division. We had Randy Brown taking on Francisco Trinaldo. And, man, Trinaldo does not age. This guy is 44, I believe. And, man, he is still fighting at a very high level. Yes, he's 44 years old. And, man, he's been around for a long time. And I thought Trinaldo could have got the decision in this fight, but Randy Brown gets the decision victory. It was a pretty close fight. Randy Brown continues his ascent in this welterweight division. So he's on a pretty good win streak right now. That's either 4 or 5 in a row for him. So he is slowly but surely climbing the ranks in this welterweight division. So he should be facing ranked competition soon. Moving on to the main event, we had Mackenzie Dern taking on Jan. And this was a very, very interesting fight. It was a close fight, really. Mackenzie Dern, she dominated, I believe, the first and fifth rounds with a lot of grappling. She had like 9 minutes of ground time. And she had a couple of submissions that looked like they could have, that they were almost locked in. But credit to Jan, she fought out of those. She showed a lot of perseverance on the ground. She did not give up. And Dern is such a strong woman that she can just like muscle you into the position that she wants you to be in. So, Jan, she fought out of those really, really tough positions. It was a majority decision. One judge had it as a draw. The other two had it as Jan with the slight advantage. And, I definitely have to agree with that. But, hey, if Dern in the second or third round, or fourth, really, if she did just a little bit more, she maybe could have squeaked out the victory. But, man, those submissions that Dern had were I thought she was going to get it. But, again, Jan fought out of those tough positions. So, Jan continues to move up in the women's strawweight rankings. Now, we are going to go to Bellator 286. All right, let's get into this Bellator card. The first fight of the night ended in a really, really gruesome way. It was Richard Plancita and C.J. Hamilton. Richard Plancita, he stepped forward and his ankle just folded. It was pretty gross. So that's how the fight card started. But luckily there wasn't any other really gross injuries like that. We had Lance Gibson Jr. getting a submission victory. We also had J.J. Wilson getting the decision victory. So J.J. Wilson in this lightweight division, he wants to be in that lightweight Grand Prix. So, he was hoping with a win that he would get his shot to be in that tournament. So we will see and find out. He's definitely an exciting young fighter from New Zealand. He's got the personality for it. I would love to see him in the tournament. So give him a shot, Bellator. Moving on, we had Islam Makhachev taking on Nick Brown, and Magmadov gets the decision victory. Nick Brown was all bloodied up by the end of this fight, so Magmadov was really dominant in this victory. Moving on, we had a bantamweight bout. We had Bobby Cerrone III getting the decision victory. So that, as a prospect in the bantamweight division, he continues his journey. He is now 3-0, so he's still a really, really young fighter. So excited to see what else he can do in Bellator. Now, moving on to the main card. This main card had a lot of really, really good fights. The first fight was Juan Archuleta taking on Enrique Barzola, and Juan Archuleta gets the decision victory. He looked really, really good in this fight. So, he was coming off of back-to-back losses, you never know how a fighter really bounces back from back-to-back losses. That was his biggest losing streak of his career, so he's used to winning. And also, his last fight, he got stopped for the first time, I believe, in his career. So, again, you just never know how fighters are going to rebound from losses or the first stoppage of their career. But he rebounded immaculately, fought a really good fight. So he is still one of those higher echelon bantamweights in Bellator. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had Aaron Pico taking on Jeremy Kennedy. I was really excited to see Aaron Pico. This guy just shuts off people with a punch. It doesn't matter if it's to the jaw or to the body. He shuts you down. And unfortunately, according to Pico, he dislocated his shoulder the first punch he threw in this fight. So he was trying to pop his shoulder back in the whole entire round. Jeremy Kennedy, he had no idea that even happened because he was just trying to wrestle Pico. And yeah, then after the first round, oh my God, Aaron Pico just told his corner pop it back in, and they were moving his arm in all different directions. They were whipping it back and forth, trying to lock it back into place. Oh, it was pretty brutal. I've never seen a corner, like I've never seen that happen in a corner before, and they just kept wailing on his arm, and it did not get back into place. And basically, the doctor had to come in and tell him, you cannot fight. So, disappointing end to that fight. So, Jeremy Kennedy gets the TKO victory, but, I'm sure Aaron Pico is going to come back stronger than ever next time. So, unfortunate end to that fight, but it was the right call. But, Aaron Pico would have fought with a dislocated shoulder. He was ready to go. So credit to him for his toughness, but it was pretty brutal to watch his arm just get flung all around. Moving on to the co-main event, what a wild one this was. AJ McGee making his lightweight debut against Spike Carlyle. Spike Carlyle is tough as nails, as you saw in his previous win, he fought in Rising and won, but his last Bellator win, he had a crazy comeback against Dan Moret. And he submitted Moret in the third round, but Spike Carlyle was getting beat in that fight. But now he comes into this fight against a debuting lightweight AJ McGee. And Spike Carlyle, in the opening seconds, he brought the fight to AJ McGee. These guys were swinging and banging, man. I loved it. I was in my kitchen, and this fight started. And all of a sudden, I was right in front of my TV. I ran over to the TV. This fight is a very exciting fight, and both guys didn't back down. But AJ McGee did look like he had a little bit more of the better technique and the sharper striking. So AJ McGee gets the decision victory. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now. Is he only will go back down to featherweight if he can get that trilogy fight with Pitbull. I would love to see the trilogy fight with Pitbull. In my opinion, I thought they should have did that second fight a little bit sooner than they did Bellator, but they waited a little bit, and I think it was about a year later they did that second fight. And I had AJ winning that second fight. So, it's going to be interesting to see if they do that trilogy. I think Bellator should do that trilogy. AJ McGee is a star. They get, his personality and everything about him just screams to me that he's a superstar. And he's still only like 26, 27. He's 19-1. All of his fights coming under the Bellator banner, so he's a homegrown talent. They really should be pushing AJ McGee a little bit more than what they're doing right now. But congrats to AJ McGee. Moving on, we had a featherweight main event. We had Patricio Pitbull taking on Adam Boris. Pitbull was defending the featherweight title, and Pitbull gets the decision victory. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but Pitbull, he's only focused on winning, and he in the post-fight press conference, and while he was still in the cage, the crowd was booing, and he told him to F off. I thought that was kind of funny. So, it's hard for us as fans to, we can think a fight's boring, but we're not in there throwing hands, throwing kicks, throwing elbows. We're not in there in the cage. So, I always try not to, over-criticize fighters on maybe, quote-unquote boring fights. But sometimes the fight's not boring. It's just very technical. But this fight, it was technical. Boris threw a couple high flying knees, and that didn't really help him because Patricio Pitbull just took him down or got in the clinch. So, Boris, as explosive as he was, at times in this fight, his explosiveness kind of got him in trouble and kind of got him in these grappling exchanges with Patricio Pitbull. But Patricio Pitbull, he is the GOAT of Bellator. He's got like almost all the records for them. Most Bellator fights, most title fights in Bellator, most title defense. So he's got like a slew of all of these records in the Bellator record book. So you got to respect him for that. But like I said on the last fight, Patricio Pitbull versus AJ McGee 3 for the featherweight title. Bellator, please get that fight done. I would love to see that fight. That's a fight that really excites me. I think that, the first fight was insane. The second fight was a little bit lackluster. It was a little bit slow at times, but again, I think they were just trying to fight really technical. And I think AJ McGee kind of got Pitbull's respect after that first fight because AJ McGee, he dropped him, almost knocked him out. Then he submitted him. So, that first fight was crazy. So I hope that they can get a trilogy fight between these two. There's a great story behind this whole anthology between these two. So, get that fight done, Bellator. And that's going to wrap up Bellator 286. And that's going to do it for this episode of the KO Podcast. If you want to stay in touch with the podcast, follow me on Twitter because I am very, very active on Twitter. The Twitter handle is just type in the KO Podcast with Tyler Russo and it will pop up. The podcast also has a Instagram, the KO_podcast. Follow me on Instagram. And also we have a YouTube page. Just type in the KO Podcast with Tyler Russo. And that is going to do it for this episode. I hope you all have a safe and blessed day. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Bye-bye.